Family and loved ones gathering today, saying they are not giving up hope in finding Kierra Coles, the postal worker who went missing on the South Side 3 years ago.
WGN's Brona Tumulty's joining us now with more on that story. Brona.
Good evening, guys. Kierra Coles was last seen on October 2nd, 2018. Today she would have turned 29, and while there was cake here and balloons for her, her family still has no idea where she is.
She was very ambitious. You know, everything she said she was going to do, she did. If she set a goal to do something, she completed that, and she did it.
A birthday party getting underway today on the city's Lower West Side, but the guest of honour's whereabouts remain unknown.
So sad that she's not here to celebrate her birthday with us.
It's the third year Karen Phillips has celebrated her daughter Kierra Coles' birthday without her.
Every time we come out here, I hope it be the last time.
Coles would have turned 29 today. She vanished back in 2018 when she was 3 months pregnant, and no one has heard from her since.
Very emotional. You know, I had my breaking point this morning, but I'm okay now, but it's emotional every day. When you go from seeing your child every day to not seeing her for almost 3 years, could nobody out here imagine.
The young mother-to-be was a postal worker, and originally it was reported she was last seen on surveillance video leaving her Southside home near 81st and Vernon. But her mother says that's not her.
I know it's not her, yeah. You know your child, they walk, you can look over in the crowd and be like, it's my daughter right there. You know, you just know as a parent.
Now, as other missing persons cases have garnered national media attention, Phillips doesn't want her child to be forgotten by those still trying to crack the case.
They don't care because of her color, to me.
And remains hopeful her daughter will be here next year to celebrate her 30th birthday, surrounded by family.
Until they come and tell me to identify anything, she's still alive.
Now, there is an almost $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in this case. If you know anything, police want to hear from you. You can also leave a tip anonymously at cpdtip.com. Well, Ivan Pilson, Brona Tumulty, WGN News.
Before we begin, take a moment and tell me something in the comments. Where are you watching from right now? I want to see how far this story travels. And if stories like this draw you in, subscribe. What you're about to hear is not just another disappearance. It's a case that still leaves more questions than answers. Now listen carefully. On an ordinary day in Chicago, a young woman named Kierra Coles stepped out of her apartment for what seemed like a normal routine. She was pregnant, full of hope, and preparing for a future that she had been quietly building. She worked as a postal worker, a job that required early mornings, consistency, and discipline. But on this day, something felt different. Kierra was last seen leaving her home in uniform. Surveillance footage and neighbor accounts confirmed she walked out with the same sense of routine she had always carried. But what makes this case unsettling is not just that she disappeared, it's how quickly everything went silent after that moment. There were no immediate signs of struggle, no dramatic incident caught on camera, no clear witness stepping forward with a solid explanation. Just absence. Think about that for a second. A pregnant woman leaves her home, and within hours she is completely unreachable. If you're following closely, drop a comment right now with "I'm watching" and tell me where you are. This helps me know how many people are really paying attention to this story. Now let's continue. When Kierra failed to return home, concern didn't take long to set in. Family members knew her routines, they knew her habits, and more importantly, they knew that something wasn't right. She was the kind of person who stayed in contact, the kind who wouldn't just disappear without letting someone know. But when calls went unanswered and messages went unread, concern turned into alarm. At first, like in many cases, there was hope. Maybe her phone died, maybe she was delayed, maybe she stopped somewhere and simply lost track of time. Those are the kinds of explanations families cling to in the beginning. But as time passed, that hope started to fade. Kierra's phone activity went quiet. No calls, no texts, no social media activity, nothing. And in cases like this, silence becomes the loudest clue. If you're still here, make sure you subscribe now. This story only gets more intense as we go deeper, and what you're about to hear next changes everything about how people view this case. When authorities began looking into her disappearance, they started retracing her last known steps. Her workplace, her route, her contacts, all of it became important. Investigators needed to piece together a timeline, but timelines are only as strong as the information left behind. And in this case, the trail started to go cold faster than expected. There were questions that didn't have answers, gaps that couldn't be explained, and a growing sense that something may have happened to Kierra that wasn't visible on the surface. Now pause for a moment, because this is where you come in. As you're listening to this, comment below. What do you think happened to Kierra? Don't wait until the end. Say your theory now. Sometimes, looking at a case with fresh eyes can reveal things that investigators miss. As days turned into weeks, the urgency only grew stronger. Kierra wasn't just missing, she was pregnant. That detail made the situation even more critical. Time wasn't just about finding her, it was about finding her in time. Family and community support began to spread awareness. Posters, social media posts, calls for information. The hope was simple: someone somewhere had seen something. But even with all that attention, the answers remained elusive. And that's what makes this case so haunting. Because when someone disappears, the question isn't just where they are. It's what happened in those first few critical moments after they were last seen. And in Kierra's case, those moments remain a mystery. If you want part 2, stay locked in, stay subscribed, and don't forget, tell me where you're watching from. If you're still here, keep listening closely, and before we go further, comment where you're watching from. The more I see where this story is reaching, the more it shows how serious this case really is. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because what happened next is where things start to take a darker turn. After Kierra was reported missing, investigators began going over her last known movements with precision. They looked at her schedule, her workplace routine, and the last confirmed moments she was seen. In cases like this, every second matters, and every detail could be the difference between finding answers or losing them completely. What stood out immediately was how ordinary everything seemed before she vanished. There was no obvious warning sign, no dramatic argument captured on record, no public incident that pointed directly to what might have gone wrong. And that is exactly what makes this case so difficult to understand. Because sometimes, the most dangerous situations don't look dangerous at all, until it's too late. As the investigation continued, attention turned toward people closest to her. Friends, acquaintances, and anyone who may have had contact with her around the time she disappeared. In many cases like this, the truth is often hidden in plain sight, buried in conversations that didn't seem important at the time. But even with interviews and inquiries, nothing concrete surfaced. And that silence becomes unsettling. If you're following this closely, I want you to do something right now. Pause and comment what you think might have happened in those final hours. Was this a case of someone she trusted, or something completely unexpected? Don't wait, share your thoughts now. Back to the timeline. One of the most troubling parts of the case is that Kierra's disappearance didn't just affect one person. It sent shockwaves through her entire community. People who knew her described her as responsible, consistent, and focused on her future. She had a life that was moving forward, not one that seemed to be headed toward something like this. So when she suddenly vanished, it didn't match the person everyone knew. And that mismatch is where suspicion begins to grow. In investigations like this, inconsistencies matter. If someone's actions don't align with their character, it raises questions. But even then, questions alone don't bring answers. What makes this even more difficult is the lack of physical evidence early on. No clear signs pointing to a single location. No confirmed sighting after she was last seen. Just uncertainty. And uncertainty, is one of the hardest things for both families and investigators to deal with. If you're still watching, make sure you subscribe, because in Part 3, we're going to explore the theories, the clues that surfaced later, and the details that made this case even more complex than it first appeared. Now think about this for a moment. A pregnant woman leaves home and then nothing. No communication, no trace, no clear explanation. That kind of silence is not normal. And the longer silence continues, the more it suggests that something serious may have happened much earlier than anyone realized. As investigators dug deeper, they began to consider all possibilities. They had to ask difficult questions. Was this a targeted incident? Was it someone she knew? Or was it something entirely random? Each possibility opened a different direction, but none of them had solid confirmation. And without confirmation, the case remains open, unresolved, and deeply unsettling. This is why cases like Kierra's continue to get attention even years later, because there is something about unanswered questions that keeps people searching for the truth. And that search doesn't stop. If you're still here, drop a comment right now with where you're watching from, and stay subscribed. Because what comes next in Part 3 is where the story starts to take a more complicated turn, and the questions get even harder to ignore. As the investigation into Kierra Coles' disappearance continued, the focus shifted toward building a full picture of her final known moments and identifying any hidden details that could explain what happened. With no immediate signs of struggle and no clear evidence pointing to a specific location, investigators relied heavily on timelines, phone activity, and witness accounts. Over time, different theories began to surface. Some suggested she may have encountered someone she knew and trusted, while others pointed to the possibility of a targeted incident connected to someone in her personal life. There were also broader concerns about whether her disappearance could have involved random violence, though no single theory was ever confirmed. Her family continued to push for answers, refusing to let the case fade into silence. They kept her story alive through awareness campaigns, public appeals, and community support. This pressure helped keep attention on the case, even as official leads became limited. Despite efforts from law enforcement and the community, the case remained unsolved. No definitive evidence was found to clearly explain what happened after she was last seen, and no confirmed resolution has been reached. The uncertainty continues to leave questions unanswered, and her disappearance remains one of many cases that highlight how quickly a life can vanish without clear explanation. If you've been following this story from the beginning, comment your final thoughts below. What do you believe really happened to Kierra? And don't forget to subscribe, because I'll be breaking down more real cases like this that people are still talking about. Also tell me where you're watching from, and stay tuned for the next story, because the truth behind these cases often runs deeper than what we first see.